Why do we send our kids, our children, to the perjury of school, these big institutions, these large industrial indoctrination centres, to learn what the state deem necessary for our children, for our offspring, for our boys and girls? Why do we do that? It's been troubling me for a long time in this journey in which I've been exploring, I suppose, the truth of what's going on in the world and how we perceive things. And it seems to me a very odd thing. We've all been through the system, of course, and churned out the other end and think, perhaps many of us think no different of it, and we just assume that this is what life is about. You just send your kids to school and then that trains them up in some form of education so they can perhaps go to university or go out into the workplace. But why do we do it? Why do we do it in vast numbers and continually worry, or at least people like me and some parents at least, worry about what's being taught? And why is the education such an interest to the government? Why are they determined that children must go and have departments so that if your kids are not going to school, that they want to know where they are and what they're doing, and even want to know what kind of education you're giving them if you are homeschooling? Many's a time you hear of parents saying, "Oh, I've had to have an inspection at home." They wanted to know what I was teaching the kids and whether that was relevant. Well, what business has it of a government to know whether the kids are being educated to a standard or not? It's none of their damn business, is it? Yes, I can understand there may be a small worry about health, and that the parents are just not abusing their children or letting them sit in front of the television all day long whilst they sit on the dole and do nothing. I get that, of course, and that could be easily sorted out. But why are the states so interested and worried about what we teach our children? And why do they want to tell us what we ought to be teaching our children? A curriculum that is focused on their indoctrination, teaching us some of the skills that we might need in life, maths and English and so forth, and then a whole load of ideas that really has nothing to do with them. Moral ideas, ethic ideas, sexualization ideas. Why are they even entering into that? Religious ideas, potentially, or not at all. And yet the parents, the mums and dads of those kids are the ones who are best placed, are they not, to know what they would like their children to learn? Well, that ought to be the case, of course, but then just look at some of the mums and dads that you see walking down the street and you wonder if they have enough education in and of themselves. And I know that's me being incredibly judgmental, but I do believe the parents ought to have that right. It is their right. It's not whether they ought to have it, they have that right. And yet the government, in its blatant abuse of power, wants to tell our kids what to learn, what histories they should concentrate on. They don't teach the children things that perhaps you and I now, on reflection, would like those kids to be taught. Common sense, critical thinking, how to ask questions, what questions to ask, how to see if the world is being run correctly, how to ascertain if there is a psyop going on, what is a false flag, what do we think is truth, how do you get to the truth, all those sort of things which might be useful for children. And then skills. What skills could they actually use? Not necessarily academic skills that they need to go on to university for, but physical skills. How to cook at home, how to grow, how You might build things, a cabin, a house, put up shelves, plug in electric equipment, basic stuff like that. Stuff that once you've left that school, you would have at least some way of coping on your own in the interim while you're looking for whatever it is that you want to do with your life. Perhaps teaching children spirituality, who they really are and what the purpose of life is, would be good. And when I say teaching that, helping them to discover who they are and what they think the purpose of life is. Not what the purpose the government wants. No, not something that's indoctrinated and brainwashed. So why do we send them to those great big schools where there's 30 plus to a class and one teacher and a series of strangers who have a whole load of weird ideas, and we're not privy to them, and we hand over our rights and our guardianship to these people who we've never met, teachers who we've not spent perhaps more than 10 minutes with. And we've no idea of their backgrounds and their morals and their ethics and their training and their thoughts on life and their politics and those sort of things. And yet we happily let our children, who are a clean slate of paper, being taught things by them. Excuse my clearing of my throat this morning. Wouldn't it be nice to have smaller hubs of, if you can't bring your children up at home and you're unable to because you need to, at this stage in this world development, we still have to go to some form of work in order to pay the bills which are put upon us many times unfairly, and we're many times trying to find actually what is the purpose of our life and find enjoyment and creativity in our world, which is being taken over by a dark force that doesn't want us to enjoy life and is trying to keep our emotional state down and in a worried position. Wouldn't it be nice to have smaller hubs in the same street? I mean, there are houses in which teachers could take in children who are across the road from you, 4 or 5 at a time. If every street had a teacher, if that was workable, that they would take in, it may be retired people that you've spoken to many times, people that you know who know what they're about, and you were able to take in your children and help them to learn English and maths, perhaps another language, and some very basic things. Learn about their lives, what they did, how they got through life, read books together and enjoy the experience of somebody else. And maybe the children would go to different ones of these little hubs so that they could experience a lot of different people's lives and work out what is their passion, what do they want to do. Not being told, no, this is the area that you've got to go into, or this is the subjects that you've got to learn, but actually encouraging children to ask questions of other people, particularly those that have lived around a lot, to find out the answers and assimilate for themselves what life is about. We're living in a lie at the moment. We've given, and we continue to give, a power to a small bunch of people who in their dark rooms, behind closed doors, make up rules and regulations that we're all supposed to abide by. There are so many of these rules and regulations that they call legislation. You have to have specialists with huge tomes, library full of tomes, so that they know what is right and what is wrong, and when you've crossed the line and when you've offended somebody with what they call an offence, especially in the civil matters. We don't need any of that, do we? We don't need any of that. We know what's right and wrong. I believe we're born with the morals and ethics that we need for this world. We're born with it. We know what's right and wrong. And if we know we can teach our children our own ethics and live by our own codes, we don't need legislation and teachers and indoctrination and brainwashing. But we've allowed this situation to pass in which, in order to continue this situation, we have to send the next generation to these indoctrination camps where they're not encouraged to ask questions. They are told what everything is, what the world is like and what you have to do and the importance of going to work and earning money and being a slave. And then they come out and they continually prepare for a life of hardship. Why do we do that? Why do we send our children to those places? What kind of mother and father are we if we do that?